I was scrolling through a bunch of robot vacuums last week, thinking about how many cheap models end up sitting in the corner, half filled with dust and never really touching the corners of a room. I'd gotten a few budget promises from cheap brands that sounded good on paper, only to discover that the suction was barely enough to pick up a single pet hair, the battery barely lasted through a hallway, and the app kept crashing when I tried to schedule a clean. That feeling of buyer's remorse is why I pause before I click Add to Cart on any robot cleaner. The question is, does the new roborock Saros Z70 actually feel like a smarter purchase? Or is it just another shiny gadget that will end up as decorative tech? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first heard about the OmniGrip Mechanical Arm, I imagined a tiny robotic arm that could actually pick up a sock or lift a small object from the floor. In practice, the arm is more of a clever way to engage mopping pads and a small brush that can lift light debris before the mop's wet cloth does its job. For a family with toddlers who constantly drop crayons and cereal, that little extra mechanical aid can mean the difference between a dry sweep and a wet mop that has already collected the spill. I tried it on a kitchen floor that had a broken piece of toast, a few crumbs, and a stray Lego. The robot located the mess, used its brush to pull the crumb-sized pieces into the suction pathway, then swiped the wet mop across the spot. The result was a clean area without any streaks, which is something my older robot vacuum never managed. The real star of the show is the suction 22,000 par, is a number you don't see on any budget unit. In my apartment, I have a mix of hardwood and low-pile carpet in the living room. After a night of movie marathon snacks, there were popcorn kernels scattered across both surfaces. On the carpet, the Z70 suction pulled the kernels right into the bin, and on the hardwood it didn't just push them around, the force felt like a mini vacuum that actually sucked the particles in. That power also makes a noticeable difference when you have pet hair. My cat sheds heavily, and I usually have to run a handheld device over the floor after the robot finishes. With the Z70, the first pass already collected most of the hair, leaving only a few stray strands that the mop handled. It's a practical win because it cuts down on the extra vacuuming step many owners still have to do. Navigation is another area where the Z70 tries to set itself apart. The StarSight 3D navigation system uses a combination of LiDAR and visual sensors to map a room in 3 dimensions. In real life, that translates to fewer bumps into furniture and more efficient routes. I noticed it especially when the robot entered a room with a low coffee table and a tall bookshelf. Instead of rattling against the legs of the table like many cheaper robots, it tilted slightly, sensed the obstacle, and went around smoothly. The system even remembers where it cleaned, so it avoids overlapping too much on the next cycle. For those who have a multi-room layout, this efficiency can shave minutes off each cleaning session and preserve battery life. Battery life is a point where the Z70 both shines and reveals a hidden trade-off. The unit lasts roughly 180 minutes on a full charge, which is impressive for a robot offering such high suction and a mop function. However, that endurance comes at the cost of a larger, heavier battery pack. On a single-story home, the robot manages to finish cleaning, return to its dock, and still have a healthy charge reserve. In a 2-story house, you might find the device needing a quick top-up after a full house clean, especially if you schedule a mopless vacuum cycle together. The dock does have a built-in power supply that can top off the battery while it charges the mop water tank, but the extra charging time can push the total cycle length closer to an hour. If you're hoping for a set-it-and-forget-it experience with minimal human intervention, you may need to plan for occasional dock visits. Now let's talk about the multifunctional Dock 4.0, which claims to be a 10-in-1 hands-free maintenance hub. In the test apartment, the dock automatically emptied the robot's dustbin into a larger bag, refilled the water tank from its reservoir, and even cleaned the mop pad with a little spray of disinfectant. This is the kind of automation that turns a high-end robot into a truly low-maintenance appliance. The only snag is that the dock occupies a decent amount of floor space, roughly 1 foot by 1 foot, and the bag replacement is a proprietary size. If you have a small entryway or a cluttered room, you'll need to allocate a dedicated spot for the dock, which is something many other robot vacuums don't require. So who should consider buying the roborock Saros Z70? If you have a mixed floor,